for some reason stream just kept dying a minute ago and we were dropping frames all over the place. So we're going to give this one a go once more. So we're going to look at Cerro Torre GC by agrainger. Now he's someone who is definitely more of an up and comer within the community. He's had a few really good courses, particularly as Zach just reminded me, GC Mullerweg from the National Treasure was a real favourite of mine. I really liked that course. Unfortunately, lag kind of hit that one hard. He's really good at creating environments, and his Dream Team course last year, I want to say Blackwater Park, was based on that kind of California coastline. So that was a really nice one, and we're hoping to see kind of a bit more, even more progression this time around. Now, I did just look at the form, and we've set this up so it's blue and blue tees, east winds, medium, but we're going to get straight into this. And so, hopefully, having just restarted the internet, hopefully this all holds up. I mean, straight away, I think we're going to have to drop down to high graphics, I think, relatively quickly, because there's a lot going on this course. So if we just zoom out a little, so you can see what he's done is a nice blend of like the Swiss mountain backdrop and then kind of colours that you wouldn't normally tend to see on a Swiss course. So lots of autumnal kind of reds and oranges and things like that, which is definitely different. Clubhouse, swimming pools, kind of rocky cliffs and stuff. Yeah, so he's done well to hide the default backdrop behind all of these autumn trees. A ton of planting here, and if we zoom around here, we get some more rocky areas. I mean, there's a lot going on here. Waterfalls. Now, he did make a note in his notes that he tried to avoid the kind of bad lighting. So we'll pick up on that when we get around it. But I started out doing this when I first started designing, and actually kind of prefer not doing that. The reason being that you tend to end up with certain holes just not playing away from the sun. Understandably, that's what you're trying to do. But as a result, you will end up with like certain holes just not testing like a wind direction. So the more you vary hole directions, I think it generally makes the course as a whole play better, even if it means you have the odd bad looking hole. And actually, you can mitigate that. Now, what I will say is he has used a ton of the plot, so there's a huge amount of planting going on here. I think your life would have probably been easier had you put some of these holes closer together, but expansive routing, no bad thing, can definitely work. So we have a big waterway. Let's have a quick look down there. So I'm guessing he's going to have had to made a load of the planting absolutely giant and used some high res or high draw objects. Hey, Lucy. Yeah, we're starting a little bit earlier today just because it's the one time the kids have gone to sleep, so we're going to go with that. The rocky mountainside looks cool. Got some more waterfalls and things. Yeah, interested to see how this one plays. This is a really different look to what we've seen before. Oh, thank you for the sub trees, I appreciate that. Right, let's get into this and see what we've got. Okay, so first of all, I can immediately see I'm going to drop down to high, that it's already grabbing, which is understandable because, so I worry that this one might cause frame rate issues on console. I mean, he now designs on PC, doesn't he? He used to design on console. As you can see, it's going smoother now. The reason being, with kind of the frame rate issues, is because there's a lot of really large objects. So the computer's trying to process so much stuff, whereas when you shrink them down, it processes them at a lower resolution, which makes it run a bit cleaner. Now, I feel like the texture choice, I'm not sure it's working for me as well, because we've got these really muted autumnal colours and then a super bright green fairway and green texture. I might have liked these a bit more muted, and then it would have felt like they really just fit in a little bit more. Particularly the fairway. The fairway seems quite very bright. Now, that said, we can probably hit up here. I think we could smooth out our sculpting just a little. The green itself, again, yeah, as you'd expect, favours a drive down this left-hand side. I mean, if we're into wind, I don't think it's a real problem. I think this little node of fairway, we can join that in a little bit neater, kind of coming around this way, so that we don't do this like in then out thing that we've got, because that kind of, for me, that's almost, a lot of people might view this as like, this gives you an option of, oh, you can play here or you can play here. To me, actually, it's kind of limiting an option. If you draw a fairway down this way, well, you could hit your driver here or here or here or here, rather than just being like, oh, you've hit down the middle, therefore you're in heavy rough. I don't think is really why we're doing it. We're doing it to allow an option out here. Now, planting-wise, it looks really good. I think a few bits are just a bit giant here. My taste, these start looking, you can see with the wind, start looking very two-dimensional when you blow them up this big. Yeah, that's one of those weird ones where the controller doesn't quite recognise downswing. I think it was slow, but maybe not that slow. Anyway, we've got a bad look into this green. It is a good look. Right, that's a better swing. Hopefully, we might have saved it. There's a shot. And it's a really cool look from this green. Out and over across. Hey, Jay. Yeah, the problem you're going to have with these grasses is they can be really bright in the sun. And I know you're trying to avoid that. Yeah. That's a totally undeserved birdie. We'll take it. And also, I think it really tells here that you haven't rotated the grasses, and I know it's a pain, but rotating as you place will stop that kind of one line of grass, which you don't get from many angles, but it's just worth checking. Really cool look here. Like, I think this works nicely. You can, those two bunkers, I really like your bunkering, which I feel has been a point you've been trying to work on for the last couple of courses. I think they sit in the ground really nicely. Again, big cambered fairway, so we've got to be challenging towards those bunkers. In terms of your fairway shaping, I don't think it needs to come out to here. Like a straighter line down here would make more sense to me, because nobody's really laying up out here. If we look at the overhead, I guess it can't, I don't know. I think it visually, just from the tee, maybe the land's a bit too high here. It looks a bit odd. From the overhead, it looks fine. Any tips for planting on console where grass doesn't render? Yeah, I mean, you have to make it a little bit bigger, and I guess the best thing I would suggest is look at what other courses have done. How have they made it work, and try and steal some of that. Because even if you're on console, ooh, we're going to be, no, we're not quite heavy rough, but we are pushed this way. This is not John's, this is Granger's. Okay. Yeah, still, the fairway and green textures are throwing me just a little. Interesting green. And the bunkering really, like for the style you're going for, really does work. I think you could have allowed a little bit more width down here with your fairway. Like, the way you're cutting your planting so close into the heavy rough most of the time means that when it's like narrowed like this, like really tight, kind of either want the planting to come out or the fairway to go out to meet it. It is a little bit, but it makes sense because it's around this mound that's at the front. I mean, again, I think the reason you're saying that, to make it look a bit more natural, I guess, you're probably bringing some of your planting up here, because the way you've planted this course is anything that is not fairway or green is basically planting. So it looks a little, that's why I think it looks a little odd to people. Now that said, we've got a good chance of just the red slope that's bothering me a touch here. Good sightline again though. Ah. That was me. That should bounce in. Good. Yeah, I'm actually, like, I think the bunkering's a really strong point so far. Probably need a lob wedge pitch. And that could go too far. Oof. There we go. Yeah, I do think a couple of the items are blown up a little bit big, certainly the bushes, and that's what's causing the little bits of lag that I'm getting, where it's just stuttering more than other courses that I've played. Now I'll play this at other times, because I don't think my internet's doing the best job possible today. But I also think when you're looking back at these ones in particular, they do get a bit cartoonish when they're blown up a bit like this big. Oh, 2 birdies in 2 holes. We can't really argue with that. Really good high par 3. I like the front pin. The front pin's entertaining because we want to be landing just a little bit short in order not to run on. And you can see that the danger here is potentially going long and right. So whilst this slope will help get us towards a pin, presumably down here, for this pin it's hurting and making us land a little bit shorter and then take on these 2 bunkers. So I think this is again really well thought through. Framing's great. Ranger's framing's always really good. And actually the autumnal colours, when they're a bit more muted like they are here, so you can see these are a bit darker than they maybe usually would, those work really well. Yeah, good afternoon for me, morning for you guys, I suspect. Right. The fast is not going to help us, and I think we've got a pretty treacherous putt coming our way. Or a chip. Please be a chip. Ah. I think so. It's definitely not... It is not the smoothest course I've ever played. Which is unfortunate. You also have these 2 paths. I would probably use a slightly different texture. These we can see like annoying little thing that doesn't really matter, but you've got a little bit of bush sticking out through your path. Let's just try and get it just over the top of the mound and just roll down. Hey, fun putt. The mound really adds to the interest of that. This is a good hole design. Like, I really enjoy this pin. I think probably for me that's the most fun pin on the hole. Although the back right one I think would be quite cool as well. Okay, drivable par 4. I'm in wild green. What difficulty did you say this was? Medium, tough as EC Elite. Yeah, that fits perfectly. Okay, so drivable par 4 that is like you are laying way back or you are going for it. You're kind of not playing the 3-wood and trying to hit between here. I would imagine you possibly can do, but I don't know. I might like to see a tiny bit more of fairway to allow us to really come play close to this bunker. I feel like this bunker is purely a miss rather than you necessarily taking it on. And actually I think opening up that front pin and letting people play really close to try to access that would be entertaining. It is the large bushes, I would say. It doesn't look like it, but it's a similar sort of design. Now, what do we want in? I don't really want to wedge in, but actually we could pitch in. But we could. There's a pretty significant camber and slope here. I think we play somewhere down here and just let the ball run out. I think the rocks are a good choice. I mean, the only other thing I might have done would have been to mess with the natural terrain a little bit more, but again, that's difficult. Yeah, it's these really big bushes and the big grasses that are going to render from... Basically, your computer is trying to render everything that when you're playing on it. So being able to see this grass for miles and miles and miles means that the computer's having to do a lot of work, which is what causes the stutter. So you kind of have to make a decision at what point do you want this grass to stop being visible, and at what point do you want the bushes to stop being visible, because if we're trying to render everything for this view at full detail, that's going to cause issues for us. I would prefer this not to be blind. I don't think we needed this slope to be an upslope and then down. don't really mind it, and I get why it's there, but that's very much a preference rather than it doesn't need to. I don't feel this sloping down to here necessarily fits with the hole that we've got, except where everything's kind of pushing us right, I would say. Really like this design though. This is a good hole. They all have been so far. I think the first is probably the weakest of them just at this moment. Yeah, course is definitely causing issues for me. Like, it is. And I think the way to do it is basically gradually make it bigger the further away from the playing surfaces you are. So, small close to the playing surfaces where it's not going to really impact how much processing power you need, and then further away you make it a little bit bigger. Because it can work. Tough driving hole. Really like the green site. I think here it does feel like we've got empty space. Like the amount you've planted. It's not because it is empty space, it's because the amount you've planted, it just feels like it's kind of arbitrarily stopping around about here. Although, I don't dislike it. I mean, the view from the tee is great. The bunkering looks really, really good. I think best compliment I can pay is I don't think Dylan would be unhappy with this bunkering. Like, they're not easy bunkers to do, certainly. It's a hell of a pinch tee shot for a long par 4 with a green. I mean, I think it's fair. It's just this is tough, and I don't want to be laying back. And yet I feel like I don't really have much of a choice. I want to be further out right anyway. I think that's about as good as we could do. I would like to see this green. Feel like there's I am as well. I think there's a couple of little changes I'd like. Just, we've pinched the tee shot a lot. We've then made it blind if you're behind these bunkers and you do lay up. So it's kind of like, if you lay up, you are just putting difficulty upon difficulty. Oh, somewhere over here. It's not undoable. It's not like impossible. Hey, Daniel. And I still think that for me is the way to play the hole. There's a shot. Great view from here as well. Like, so it's definitely doable. I think we can, like, it would have been good to be able to see that. Although tricky. The problem with that is you were going very far down on the tee shot and then very far up with the approach, and that's always going to cause some blindness if you end up behind bunkers. This is nasty. Yeah, again, I would probably like a little bit more fairway to allow forgiveness, because I'm having to carry right near here. I mean, this is as tough, especially as it's uphill. I think this pin needs a bit more forgiveness to it. Yeah. Looks lovely. And actually, these really super blown up bushes I don't really hate here. I think they look alright. Good framing as ever. Like, the par 3 looks stunning. It is, it's really nice. See, I don't think that's got a snowball's chance of hell. And I don't think I've hit that badly. Just, I guess we're going for a more difficult course. And there are other pins on this, like, to be honest, I can also see if you're high up here, you're ending up off the green as well. And this green just needed toning down a bit. Like, if we're playing a wedge shot into this green, fine. If we're playing a 3-wood in, or 5-wood, which we're probably going to have to, I think this needs a little more, a little bit more forgiveness. I mean, the planting up here looks just spectacular. When the views are right, they look really, really good. There's so much about this par 3 I liked. I wouldn't say the golf is a bit punishing. I think there's the odd thing I would change, which I think makes it a little more playable. But for the most part, I think it's really good. It's a very cool environment as well, and certainly unique. Okay, so we're now hitting hard camber from the right. Well, there's a drop off. It is definitely a tough driving course. I wouldn't think this is that, like, if you crank the conditions a little, I don't think this is far off plat level. I mean, I think he's definitely got his, it's a conscious decision with difficulty. My worry with a tour spot would be the amount of stutter that we're getting. Because I've already dropped down to high, and usually that makes everything run like buttery smooth. Okay. The fairway shaping looks a little odd. Again, I think that's solved if you just bring the planting in a tiny bit. Yeah, I think so. I think he's got this difficulty level absolutely fine. Cool to look back on that drivable par 4 we played earlier. Always like that as a fun little touch. Ah, knew I hadn't quite given that enough. But like a challenging par 5, I think the drive was really tough. Approach shot, even had we hit the fairway, was like there's clear danger. I don't think I'm carrying that. Don't think I am. Up 38, 95, 85, into wind. Really tight. And even if I do, I don't have a great angle. I don't really want to hit a partial driver somewhere up here. Can't drop down to 3-wood on that hole. Yeah, again, I mean, just it's a fine line with uphill bunkering, but it would be really nice to be able to see the green, even from behind the bunkers. I'm not convinced it's enough, but it's safe. Ah, well, there we go. I mean, I don't think the golf is too punishing at all. It is difficult, but if you execute, it's fine. Love the mountain sitting in the back, and the tree right there with where you've exposed all of the stems and things looks great. Okay, a little bit of an interesting option hole. The green sloping feels a touch odd. It feels to me like it probably should be going the other way, but given that you've got this hillside here, I think it works just fine. So here we've got a bit of an option. I mean, interested to see how other judges perceive this, but we have had a lot of fairways where it's like if you are not tight to the bunkers, you're off in the heavy rough. I guess you can lay back, but I could see going either way on this one. I think we'll go down here, and I think we'll just hit a 3-wood. Oh, I've not quite carried that as far as I thought I would do, but we're okay. Really cool view coming in over there. Yeah, that. Not sure. I think that was me rather than the lag. I should say, I keep mentioning that there's lag. I am experiencing that at the moment. I don't know how many others have done. And it could just be that my connection is not great today. So we will try this another time, for sure. I mean, part of judging is you play courses multiple times. And I mean, even then, we're 5 under through 9. It's not gone too badly. Fairway here looks like it gets a little comically thin compared to over here. And I know we're going for width and angles and all of that, but I'm not convinced this bit of fairway is used for... Well, this bit of fairway doesn't really make much sense, because if you land on it, you're going into that bunker, which I get is kind of a point, but we want to allow people to like finish up about here. So probably would be dragging these two bunkers back a little bit, allowing a bit more fairway. But it also just feels like we've got a fairway here. This is all just a bit disconnected. We've got one bit of fairway here, an excess bit here, and a bit here, and the three don't really work together. I do like the green. Pin's an interesting spot. It's maybe a touch narrow with being in that little half pipe, but yeah, I just think I'd definitely have given more fairway here, even though people won't use it. Like, it just looks a little bit odd with how tiny it is. And if you took this fairway out further here, this little bit would look less out of place. I almost think about where's your right edge and try to draw a straight line towards the green, and then your bunker's interrupting that. So although there's this line here, if you imagine, your fairway would then go out and meet the point on that line, and then that would fit and look a little bit neater. As is, this feels like... It just feels like two kind of separate holes. I think we're going to play 3-wood again. My driving is not accurate enough for this course, for sure. Even though it's been okay so far. And actually, I think this one plays a lot easier than it looks. The slow is just fine there. Hey, Pro Gamer. Thank you for joining along, and to everyone, really. It's a slightly different time of day to usual. Yeah, same thing. When we've blown these bushes way up, they do just stick out. It's almost like we've got two sizes of bushes. We've got the small ones, and then we've got the giant ones. There's nothing in between. Like, I try to make the changes a little bit more gradual. But a lot of my comments are pertaining to like the same things. Nearly. Jetmar environment's really cool. Definitely captured that like that really big feel for the course. Another drivable par 4. This one much more doable. Now, your double waterplane technique. I didn't know that you needed to use it. I'm not sure why you've used it. Is it for the previous hole? I'm trying to work out what. Oh, cool. Well, that's good news. The problem we have with the dual waterplane technique, where you've done it, is you can very clearly see the area where the waterplane is covered. There are a couple of ways to get around it. Either you put the tiny little water bits, like lots of tiny waterplanes just off the edge, and you can still get this, but like if you imagine your waterplane stops here, your second one, then it won't go, because the moment your waterplane stops here, which is why it's showing heavy rough all the way to there, which looks a little bit odd. Now, for the most part, from the ground, you're not going to see that, but when we go to scout cam, that really does grab your eye a little bit. I'm not really sure why else you would have done it. You don't have light rough, so it's not the water's not affecting that. You're planting to the edge. Yeah, but certainly here it's kind of grabbing my eye, and I don't know. I mean, it probably helps with your green, but I think you've given enough space. This works. Interesting. Alright, let's go. Well, we will go with driver. That might be a bit too much. It needs to bounce soft, and it's not going to. Ooh, we're on a rock. Yeah, and now we've got no chance of up and down. There's a couple. I mean, the main one is getting your natural water, so you're removing this texture and getting the heavy rough all the way to the edge. So that would be one reason you might do it. Also, if you put a green really close to water, sometimes it can kind of it doesn't like the surface being so close, so it can make it bend in awkward ways and basically distorts the spline. Doing a second water plane gets rid of that. That's about it, really. Okay, so maybe we are getting up and down from there. It is trial and error. I mean, yeah. Well, once again, we have not deserved a birdie. This looks stunning. I think this is the best look on the course. And normally I'm not a fan of big waterfalls. The bridge is ludicrous. I would have just gone with a dead straight, shorter bridge over here. That I'm not a fan of. Everything else I think looks stunning. And this bridge is also ludicrous. But yeah, we're kind of in fantasy land, I guess. I think you could have just done the path up here and then bridge crosses, and that sorts all of our problems. We also have a bit of a routing issue here, but we'll come to that at the green. I don't know that there's a good one. I've been meaning to put together a tutorial for that, but haven't quite got around to it yet. I think some of the slopes here may be a little bit extreme, just on the edge. Might tone them down just a touch, but I think they work. No, maybe ignore that comment. I'm not sure. I did not want the slow. I think we might have been in the bunker anyway, but I like the green slopes here because it meant that we definitely wanted to be far left in order to come at the pin from more this angle than this angle. So they work. The centerline bunker allows you to split that nicely. Makes a lot of sense. Ugh. Well, there we go. I may not be able to drive it, but the approach game has been pretty good. Okay, so now we have to look at where the next tee is, because we're going to hop to this. Now, the dead giveaway of the second bridge is that it tells us there's no reason why we wouldn't have this one here and this one here, unless you were trying to get back. So we've gone green all the way to tee here, which is fine. I just think we can make that a little bit more snug. I also think surely with this awesome area you've got here, we could find another hole along here. Have a lovely little par 3 playing across this way somewhere. I mean, in fact, even here I think would be a great par 3 green site. But I guess you can't have all the holes you want. But when we're looking at how much of the plot you've used, I think that's part of the reason. Again, green slope I think is a bit extreme. My rule of thumb usually is like anything over 3 grid squares of red is pushing it. 4 is like the max I would absolutely do. We're on like 6 or 7. Another long par 3, which I guess fits elite that we're going for. That might be okay, but it might be a little much. Well, that's not too bad. The other thing that will be causing us lag issues is the sun is still quite low, creating quite a few shadows. So that's also, there's just like a lot working in harmony to give us that. And the waterfalls, they're pretty brutal for it. That said, like, playing surprisingly well. Yeah, I'm not surprised I'm feeling the screen grab here. There's a lot of planting there, and it's all quite big. I think one of the other things I'd probably look at doing is like these sorts of really big trees. Can we shrink them down and show the same amount of trees so it's covering the same area, but it's just a smaller object? That will really dramatically reduce the amount of lag you get. Whether this lags offline or not. And the views are stunning though. You know, you've created a really good look, and I think the more I've seen it, the more the grass really fits actually. I think it works, this kind of type of grass looks really good from a distance. When you get up close it looks kind of this spiky colour. Or like, definitely feeling the Ross greens here. This one works really nicely. We did also talk about wind direction and you trying to minimise lighting. I feel like those last two back to back, I'm hitting basically kind of the same shot because I've got kind of the same distance in. I might look at that within routing, and when I'm playtesting going, well, I'm hitting a partial 5 wood twice in a row, can probably change something there. And we've gone the other side of the spine that we wanted. That's okay, we're on the green. R is all we wanted on this hole. Somewhere up here. Really tough part. It's cool to get these little glimpses of the peaks every now and again as well. I think those work really nicely. I might have liked another type of grass mixed in. I think that would help you as well. Whether it's another brown grass or something else, I think would really lift it. Yeah, this feels like just a you're not hitting driver unless you're absolutely perfect hole. Which actually with this wind I don't think is too bad. I think we can aim out here and didn't want the slow, but we're maybe okay. Well done. Like, good sculpting there to make, because it would be very easy to have that all just kick off. So that's good to have checked that and worked it, because that would have been frustrating. Like the little ravine area here. I think that works well. Yeah, compared to previous holes where we had like a lot of heavy rough in areas like this, I think this works so much better. Definitely a 3-shot par 5 in this wind. The question is where we're laying up or where we're able to lay up. A lot of space there. That's me. That is nothing to do with the course. Hit a rock and get lucky. Who knows? We'll take a guess. I mean, I've gotten so lucky in this round. Nah, not at all. I think the trees have worked really nicely. Another great looking par 3. Again, I think your slopes are a bit severe because this one is just kicking us off the green rather than necessarily helping us towards the pin. But I am sure I will come across that pin in judging. Bunkering looks amazing, framing looked great. Might have almost been tempted to lower this down just a touch more so you get that view with that hole in the background just a touch more than you do. Hopefully spins down. Yeah, that one worked alright. Guess the greens are a bit slower, and you'd never push them to 187. Don't know. I do just feel that some of these slopes are a little severe. It does look fantastic. Ooh. I like the blind tee shot. I think this works really nicely here, and it solves your problem of like creating a sightline when you're 108 feet downhill, which can be a lot trickier than people think. Really love the green site. Like, the little lake backdrop looks brilliant. This reminds me of a hole I've made on Monte Argo. It's very similar. I mean, kind of a free tee shot, but the bunkers make so there's no real benefit to going anywhere in particular on the tee shot. Definitely a 3-shot hole. I think. Maybe you can get there. It feels unlikely. Oh no, you can get there. Take it all back. Not too bad. And there's some interesting layup zones there as well. I think I'd straighten out some of your fairway kinks. So like this bit here, you can see there's like points where it goes in and out. I think we can tidy that up just a little. Because when you have dug bunkers into fairways, the way that it's almost like that unbroken line, and then this bunker comes in and forces the fairway to wrap around it. Like here, we'd be going round here, and then the fairway would be coming here. Keep your bunker, but just dig the bunker into the fairway. I think that's looked much, much better. Great look. Like the grass from ground level looks really good. Again, still wish there was just like another, not like mixed in everywhere, but little clumps of a different grass. I think would really lift this. Pulled that just a little. I like the little staircase to the next tee. I'd say also this is the best look of those, best use of those juniper trees I've ever seen. I think they look awesome here. A very Rossi finishing green. Clubhouse looks amazing. Love the blue flag. That's class. It is a really solid course. Get lucky. Not gonna get lucky. Doesn't deserve to. Although we've got quite a good lie and a backstop. Let's just make sure we get over the false front. Didn't get over the front. False front. Ah. Really good use of a false front on an elevated green. I always like that. Like we had ample space to miss it long, but coming out, there's definitely some dicey pins on this green. Again, I kind of feel like this slope is all just, it's all a bit big. Like I'm a big fan of the idea of having that back helper slope, but we've got 1 pin, 2 pins, 3 pins, 4 pins, and for all of them, it's basically just going to be hit it back and watch it kind of suck towards the front. Kind of negates the strategy just a touch. Still, well, there we are. Like that's a hell of a fun course. Now, the huge disclaimer is I experienced quite a bit of lag on that one. Now, I am well aware that could be my internet because I had to restart the stream at the beginning, or it could be the course. I think it's probably a bit of both. So I will definitely see how that one plays offline, and indeed it will be interesting to see how the next playthrough goes as well. Loads I like there. I thought the bunkering's a huge step forward. I thought there's a lot of holes that had real character and interest. I think you might have overused camber a little bit at times, but only in the sense that I think I don't think you've used it overly during the round, but it happened on a sequence of holes in a row, and occasionally we're requiring just the absolute perfect shot. Thinking back to the par 3s in particular, where there were a couple of very long par 3s with tiny landing zones. But generally thought it maybe played a bit. Yeah, maybe generally I think it played a little bit more forgiving than it maybe looked. So anyway, I'm going to cut the stream here. I'm going to be back in just 2 minutes, and we're going to kick off with Fretinig's course, which I think is my last one on the docket to do. So back in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.